Welcome to another episode of Patriot Paul. Here is the chair of the Michigan Republican Party, Kristina Karamo, speaking at a Noga County Grassroots event on January 22nd, answering questions.
Great to see all of you. My name is Kelly Pangburn. I am one of the grassroots leaders for the Noga County Grassroots and will be the moderator this evening. Is it still appropriate to say Happy New Year on the 22nd of January? Yes. Happy New Year! Let's get started. Let's go over the agenda tonight. First, we're going to start with a prayer. Then we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to do a little thank you. We're going to do a little skit about the Noga County Grassroots. I'm going to give you an explanation of the note card, how we're doing the note cards. We have a respect and order and conduct for the meeting tonight, so we'll have a little bit on that. Then Kristina will do a presentation, and then we'll get started on the Q&A questions with the group, and at the end we'll have some reminders and a little closing for you, so don't leave until we get finished with that part. So Steve Deckrow, would you please lead us in prayer this evening?
Glad to. Everybody stand with me if you would, please. If you can. Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity to gather, Father, in your name and under our flag, Father. I thank you for every family here that's represented, and every person, Father, every patriot, Lord God. I pray that you would bring your presence this evening into this room, Father, and that we would know it, Father. Father, we thank you for the covenants that our founders made with you, Lord, and they still stand today, and there's a remnant that knows that, Father. And we're asking you, Father, to have mercy on our country because we deserve judgment. But have mercy, Father, we pray. We pray, Father, for the gift of repentance, Father, for everyone who calls themselves a patriot, Lord God, and everyone who calls himself a Christian, Father. We pray for a divine intervention, Lord God, that the fence that divides us would be torn down and they would know who tore it down, Lord God. We pray for the conviction of those who are on both sides of the fence, that you would convict them, Father, of their unrighteousness and bring them to their knees, Lord. We ask your blessings upon this meeting tonight and upon Kristina as she speaks with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Steve. Since everyone is still standing, and those that cannot are fine, we'd like to go ahead and start and say the Pledge of Allegiance together.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Born and unborn. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. We especially want to thank the county chairs for attending. We know several of you had quite a drive to get here. District 2 is a lot of territory. We want everyone to know that we appreciate the fact that you arrived and arrived safely, and thank you all. If you haven't signed in yet, please do so at the front table. If you haven't filled out a note card with your questions, note cards are located on the front table as well, next to the Good Neighbor and the election integrity flyers. Please fill it out and leave it at the front table. Okay, a little bit about the grassroots, our grassroots. We are Noga County Grassroots. a political action committee, a PAC. We are a grassroots political movement that believes in America first, the Constitution of the United States, and our rights as given to us by God. We offer monthly meetings that are open to all that believe in our mission, and we work very hard to communicate our ideology to the people of Newaygo County and to our elected officials. We work alongside our Newaygo County GOP. As a matter of fact, many of our attendees and leaders of the Newaygo County Grassroots are also on the executive committee of the Newaygo County Republican Party. I think at times our Newaygo County GOP believes we're a thorn in their side, but we are here to ensure a grassroots voice. We also work hard to raise money and bring awareness for candidates and events. We work to determine which candidate is actually a grassroots candidate by their actions, not their words. The bottom line is, America needs the grassroots to rise up, and the grassroots need leaders who will stand strong in the face of tyranny with respect for our fellow man, dignity, honesty, and might, yet be humble all the same. That's a little bit about Grassroots, and our table is over there on the side, and our mission statement is on that board if you want to know more about us. Teresa? Unfortunately, we need to vacate the building no later than 8:30. We are going to ask a team of volunteers to help us put away the chairs and clean the space up. We will be ending this event at approximately 8 o'clock with the expectations of having the room restored and everyone vacated from the building by 8:30, as that is when the library staff does leave. Due to our limited time constraint, we will be posing questions to Kristina in the following order. First, we will ask the questions marked as delegates, then county chairs, then elected officials, and then from the public. We will need to cut off question submissions at 7 p.m. So please get your questions to the front table by then. All questions need to be on a note card. I, as the moderator, will read your questions from those cards. Unfortunately, we may not be able to get through all of your questions, but we will give it a Detroit Lions try. How about those Lions? Yeah.
I love it.
I'd like to introduce Teresa Emschwiller, along another of our grassroots leaders, and Isaiah Davison, our Second Amendment watchdog. Teresa will speak about acceptable conduct for the evening.
Hi guys. A lot of you know me, but a lot of you don't, because there's a lot of new faces in here. Welcome to our Karamo Q&A. I'm just going to read what I wrote because it's just easier that way. I just want to take a quick minute to talk about our conduct this evening. We expect that everyone will act like calm, rational adults that can be respectful, even if you don't agree on what's being said. We expect order and for everyone to remain calm, even if you want to refute something being said. There's a calm and rational way to do that. This event is being recorded, so any bad behavior will be documented and turned into a remix. Ain't nobody got time for that. Knowing this crowd, I'm sure everyone is aware, but all weapons should be holstered. Any outburst will be given one warning. After that, my friend Isaiah here, and there are several more around the room, will escort you out of the door. So let's have a nice, respectful evening without any incidents or having to remove anybody, because we want everybody to be heard. So that's all I got for you. Stay respectful.
Thank you, Teresa. Folks, it's time to give a warm welcome and a round of applause to MIG Chairwoman Kristina Karamo. Thank you, Kristina, for coming to our District 2 district.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim. Oh no, I'll just sit this here. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out this evening, and I look forward to hearing all of your questions. The thinking behind this evening was to give people opportunity to ask me whatever they would like. One of the challenges as chairs, I oftentimes get correspondence or people get upset because I'm not responding or they don't know what's going on, and I'm one person. And so, one of our team members came up with this idea of having an event where people could anonymously submit questions and have everything asked. My goal as chair is simply to help save our state. I believe that fundamentally it is through our grassroots strength is how we save our state. I do not believe that a top-down approach is going to accomplish it. So that's why you see in the back we have our Good Neighbor program. Our Good Neighbor program is the most important program that we have, and I think it's going to really change the game, not just for the Michigan Republican Party, but if other Republican parties adopt the same model, then it will really help reinvigorate our country. Because the philosophy is that we are strong if our counties are strong. Our counties are strong if our cities are strong. Because it's about a foundation. If the foundation of any structure is weak, you can topple it very easily. So then we would simply be at the whims of whoever the state chair is. If the state chair is a good person, then we are benefited. If they're a terrible person, then we suffer. And that type of model simply isn't going to work. So the Good Neighbor program is designed to train people on exactly how our government works and how to engage our government. So how many people do we have in here who've been elected precinct delegates for this their first cycle being a precinct delegate? Okay, now let me ask you this question. How many people were told that all you have to do is vote twice a year? Okay, a lot of people were told that, and that's just simply not the case. You are to be the political ambassador for your community to your elected officials, to the party, and vice versa. If the party has an initiative or a program, then you are to be the ambassador to the party, for the party to your community. And then with the Good Neighbor program, our goal is to help people understand how their government works, how to engage our elected officials in the good and the bad. Because we don't just want to stick our finger in their faces figuratively, right? If they're doing the wrong thing, we also want to come alongside our elected officials if they're doing something right. Because oftentimes it's very lonely when you're trying to do the right thing. But if your constituents are behind you and cheering you on, that makes it a lot easier for that person to stand, and it can give them that support they need. Because remember, our elected officials are representatives. So our Good Neighbor program is also designed to help break down barriers within community, because we really lack community, in my belief. Because we're all in our little houses, we're in our little silos, and we don't know how to talk about politics with our neighbor. Now, my belief is that we're not going to beat the Democrats through like full frontal or attrition warfare. Why do I say that? Well, they control the media, entertainment, and education, and have done so for such a long time. And with them controlling these things for such a long time, we want to show up in August, run some commercials, and knock some doors and think we're going to change things. It doesn't work that way. People have to fundamentally change how they see the role of government and what our role is in government. Because one of the challenges is we as Americans, oftentimes we look at our elected officials and stick our finger out and say, well, what are they doing? What are they doing? The question is, what are we doing? So it all starts with each of us, but also, how do I go to a public meeting? How do I ask questions at a public meeting? The Good Neighbor program is designed to do that. So if I could put it into context, I liken it like a soldier on their way to battle. Now, the reality is that one of the challenges we have in the Republican Party is we don't have enough volunteers. So the Good Neighbor program is also a massive volunteer recruitment effort. We need more people for a couple of reasons. One is that for our plan to work, it requires as many people as human possibly being involved. Whether it's door knocking, whether it's showing up at community events, people need to see our presence. And also, the other thing is for our election integrity efforts as well. For our election integrity efforts, it's going to require a lot of people being involved in various aspects of the election process to prevent as much fraud as we can. And so the Good Neighbor program, again, it serves as a training tool to help people. And also we want to include content such as, we're uploading some new election integrity content, either it's up tonight or it'll be up tomorrow morning. So we'll have some new election integrity content. We also want to show people how to have those tough conversations. Because some people, they don't know how to talk to their neighbors about a tough issue. And then sometimes we don't know how to be winsome when talking about those tough issues. Our goal is to really try to convert people as many as possible to our way of thinking. And then as we convert those people to our way of thinking, our goal is to also get them active. Because again, my philosophy is they can't catch us all. And so the great thing about the Good Neighbor program is if you scan the QR code, each person has their own unique login. It's our own closed platform. So we don't have to deal with big tech censorship. We don't have to worry about anybody, trying to, any of that. It's our closed network. With our closed network, also the other benefit to the Good Neighbor program is that we finally have been able this year is to launch a quick reaction force. So for example, our elected officials, they will find out because the Democrats currently control the House, in the Senate, they'll find out at the last minute about a bill in committee or a bill that's going up for a vote. And so then it puts us at a disadvantage if we just send out an email, hope that you check your email, hope it went to your inbox and not to your junk or spam folder. With this, now we're having a quick reaction for us. If we are alerted to an issue, we can now send out a mass text message to everybody in the program and let you know what's happening. So it's really a massive benefit to this program. It really is going to help us organize on another level. The other benefit to the Good Neighbor program is it allows for our elected officials and candidates, our Republican candidates, as they go and try to either win re-election or win election, then they will have established neighborhood teams that they can work with. So they'll have these established neighborhood teams that they can talk to, because one of the challenges as a candidate is when you're going into a new territory, you only know your city, you may not know your whole district. So now you need to find out, who do I talk to? Who do I ask questions to? Well, if you have these established neighborhood teams, there's already people you can work with. And also the benefit of the Good Neighbor program, it encourages us to be engaged in our communities, not just when it's time to show up at a public meeting when we're frustrated, but also when it's time to do social events in our community. One of the reasons why the Democrats have been so effective is they're very good at using arts and entertainment and social events to recruit people. They do a very good job at showing up to a social event and getting everybody on their side and having a good time with people. That's something that we need to work on as well. We have to just be present, because you have to go to where people are. So when I ran for Secretary of State, I'm sure many of you saw, we would have tents around the state, and we would be in public places, whether it's a market or not a market, but like a fair, or just during the Cherry Festival, we were just on the street. And that's an opportunity for us to engage with the general public, because we have to get outside of our bubble. And I think one of the challenges is that we as Republicans, we operate too much like some type of Kiwanis Club. And that's no insult to Kiwanis Club or any social organization, but we operate too much like a private club. And so when we operate like a private club, that doesn't give us the opportunity to really grow our message. The other part, if you have seen our election security operations flyer. So one thing I will say with the Good Neighbor program, please sign up. If you sign up tonight and there's a link, if you just go to the website, migop.org, you can sign up there as well. And like I said, it's a very beneficial program, and it's really gonna change the game for us, because it's a way for us to get involved in our communities right now in a meaningful way, and for you to be the political leader in your community. Because here's the thing, most people know something is wrong with our country, they just don't know what's going on. And many people check out politically because they have no idea what to think. They don't know what to do, they don't know who to ask. This gives you an opportunity to be that political leader in your community. That way, when it's time to advocate for our Republican candidates, people will listen to you because you've been an advocate on the smaller issue. So it's a real meaningful way to get involved. And what I believe in is that the role of the party is to provide tools and infrastructure. And this actually really boosts the power of the grassroots, because now if you have hundreds of people per county mobilized consistently, meaningfully, I mean, again, it depends on the size of the county, of course, and politically influenced in the county and their cities. And then also, we want to make sure we're getting down on those granular issues like zoning. Right in the 2nd District, you guys are very familiar with the Goshen Battery Factory. You know the power of zoning. And most people really didn't know, because we've been conditioned to really care about the presidential election, and that's it. It's like whatever's happened at the federal level, whatever planned on our favorite show, because remember, most of the conservative thinkers we listen to, they're operating from a national perspective. They're not thinking local. So we're all fixated on all the national stuff where our backyard is on fire. But if we put out the fire in our backyard, then we're better equipped that if something crazy happens at the national level and we have a Patriot County Sheriff, we're protected. But that can't happen if our county isn't strong. So my philosophy as chair, and that gets me in a lot of trouble with people, because I don't believe in a top-down power approach. I believe that the county is the power point, not the top. Because sometimes it can seem easier, but then again, if you get a corrupt person in, then it'll just be the same thing over and over again. Plus our election security operations. Our election systems have been intentionally overly complicated. They have been made way too complicated than where the average person had no idea what's going on. And this has been the rules. It's just essentially trick us, because we're controllable that way. So for example, most people simply know how to register to vote and how to cast their ballot. And that's it. So our goal is to try to train as many people as possible on how the election process works, so we can insert ourselves where there's any potential corruption and put a stop to it. Now, our approach, as an administration to the 24 cycle is grassroots focused. So that means we need people involved. And also, another thing that I really like and excited about the Good Neighbor program and our election security operations, it doesn't pull you away from what's needed at your county. You see what I mean? Because most people are involved in their county, in their district, and then when the state is asking you for help, and then you probably are involved somewhere at church, and you have a family, you have all these things. Well, if our programs benefit the county party, it's a win-win, and you're not being pulled away from whatever responsibilities you have for your county, because it all feeds itself. And so with the election security operation, there's 18 points of focus, but it requires us having a lot of people involved. We need people involved, whether it's an election inspector, and we have to make sure that it is us as Republicans checking to make sure that we actually have Republicans as election inspectors, because there have been instances where the city may put a Democrat in and just mark them as Republican. So we need to be involved to make sure we have actual Republicans working our elections. Also, when it comes to poll challengers and poll watchers, but also, there's certain information that you can gather on election day that also helps us monitor the election process. Also, we partnered with Check My Vote to help canvass and clean the voter rolls. That's a massive source of fraud. It's a fraudulent registrations. Now, I'm not here to promise you and say, listen, this is the magic bullet, this is the formula, everything will work. It's going to be a long fight. It's going to be an ugly fight. Because think about the way things have been going in our country and our party for a long time. It's not all like suddenly we have this massive grassroots organization movement and these folks are gonna go, oh, okay, well that's great, we just go away, I guess these people are in charge now. No, it's not gonna work that way. They're gonna be kicking and screaming and clawing and digging to maintain the status quo. But we see where the status quo has gotten us. So, oftentimes I'm asked, like, what is your plan for the 24 cycle? These are it. This is it. This is the plan, because it's something that can't be destroyed, because the goal is to create as many Michiganders as humanly possible who know too much. And if I can think of any example, I always use this example of, if you took any of us in this room and strapped us to a chair and just played Joe Biden or Gretchen Whitmer commercials repeatedly, it wouldn't make us vote for them. Because we know way too much of who these people are and what they're up to. Unfortunately, many of our fellow Michiganders, that's not the case. I'm sure many of us have talked to people till we're blue in the face about a subject, and it's so irritating, and it's like, what is wrong with you? Don't you get it? But the thing about it is, depending on the media they consume, depending on how they spend their free time, they're not hearing a Republican message consistently. And I do another thing that we're really focused on is turning out the vote everywhere. One of the biggest frustrations I've had with the Republican Party is this square focus on suburbia. Like, suburbia is the only thing that matters. We take our rural areas for granted and say, well, they already vote Republican, so we don't need to spend any time up there. Well, this is ridiculous. Number one, we saw what happened in Grand Traverse and Leelanau. Those areas turned blue. So the Democrats completely, it's not like they play fair and go, oh, well, that's a red area, we're not gonna go there. Like, no, they send their people, and little by little by little, bit by bit by bit by bit, your area will turn blue. So that's one issue. The other challenge is if we don't turn out the vote in the entire state, then that leaves us at the mercy of one area. So we want to make sure we turn out the vote in every area. And many of you are aware that there's been situations where people who run with the R next to their name and they don't represent our values. So we need to make sure that we're vigilant and we have actually constitutionalists elected in those seats. Also, we're heavily focused on urban areas as well. We want to make sure we turn out that vote, because the party historically has basically said, Wayne County is a waste of time. Well, that's completely ridiculous. Wayne County has 1.7 million people. Our state has about 10 million. So roughly, give or take, 20%, a little less than 20% of Michiganders live in Wayne County. What sense does that make as a party to neglect that area? So the beauty of the Good Neighbor program is because it's individuals operating with their own community, you know what your community needs, instead of trying to bring this one-size-fits-all approach to the state. You can't do that. Every community has different issues. You know the issues your community has. I don't. You know what issues matter to people, you know what problems you're having, and if you're able to tackle those issues at the local level, then when the time comes to the House races and the Senate races and the presidential again, now you're better prepared. So that is our plan. I asked often. This is another reason I'm here to discuss what our plan is. And now I thank you for listening to my open remarks. Now I'm gonna open the floor for questions. because I want to hear what everybody has to say, and so yeah.
Thank you, Kristina.
Uh-huh.
Let's begin with the first question from our audience. First question is, what candidate are you supporting for president?
So per our bylaws, I can't answer that question. So our bylaws has a provision that all officers have to remain neutral in the primary or we could get removed. So I can't answer that question, unfortunately.
Thank you. Please define the specific media sources that delegates can trust for accuracy.
Wow, that's who. I would say really scrutinize the information, because I mean, everybody listens to something different. I listen to Human Events. We send out, of course, our information, and I'm sure there are people who disagree with us. But what I would say is scrutinize the information. Ask yourself, does it make sense? What is their evidence? You know, like there was a person who shall not be named who put like a 150-page dossier on me, and if you actually went through it, it's just full of crap. But ask yourself, who are their sources? What is their evidence? That's my thing, whether it's a news article or a podcast. Like I said, I listen to Human Events a lot. There's somebody downstate I listen to, Bob Duco, the Christian radio show host. So it just depends. So I would never like to say, these are the people you should trust. I think it's the information and look at the evidence. That would be my best answer, is that scrutinize the evidence. What's the reason they're making these claims, and what's the counterpoint? What's the other side of the story? And I think that makes you in a better position to make a decision as to what you could actually trust.
All right, thank you, Kristina. Next question. Melinda said that you were supposed to meet with Ron Weiser to handle the money he said was to cover the debt that was left. She said she asked you repeatedly if you met with him to get that straightened out. You allegedly did not meet with him. Can you explain why or why not? This seems like it would have been a beneficial meeting to attend.
So that's not what occurred at all. What occurred, there's some things that occurred within the transition of the administration. I try not to be a messy person, but since it's out there, I might as well go ahead and discuss these things. So actually, we had our initial meeting with the former administration, and that we were told that there was some money left over within our Comerica account. And there was a line of credit debt. We were not told how much the line of credit actually was. What we were told is that he will pay $200,000 towards the line of credit if you give him back the $183,000 that is in your Comerica account. And so my question is, well, how much is on the line of credit? Oh, we can't tell you that. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Why would I give you the little bit of operating capital I have left over for you to put $200,000 on the line of credit, and I have absolutely no idea what's on the line of credit? Well, guess how much was on the line of credit? $440,000. So we'd have got screwed. So, does that now, why I didn't do it? So again, she has her reasons for going out making these false claims. It's deceptive because she only tells one part of the story, not the other part of the story. So we would have gotten screwed. So that is why, again, if someone, and then I don't even know if that's legal. If I could just transfer money out to a person, I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. So, my time as chair, I've had people approach me with all types of shady propositions. And then when I don't do what they want, then they want to go blasting me. And I'm like, I don't think you want me to tell the other side of that story.
Okay, you're good, okay. How much money does the Republican Party currently owe on the line of credit with Comerica Bank, and is the party in default on this line of credit?
So the line of credit has been in default for quite some time. For whatever reason, they never paid it down to zero. In December, it was in default before I took over. So there was, as I mentioned, there were $440,000 on the line of credit. Mid-April, we found out about $183,000 in credit card debt. So this was 2 months later. And I told the banker at Comerica, hey, I don't want any credit cards. And then and this was in March when I had a conversation with him. Then mid-April, we found out there's $183,000 in credit card debt. So one of the things we did was consolidate all the debt. So there's about $500,000 on the line of credit. We did pay some of it down. Right now, that's the only debt that we have. We paid off all other debts, all other expenses for like the Mackinac Leadership Conference, all of that. So there is a dispute So I might as well go ahead and discuss this regarding the lawsuit. So there's been this big kerfuffle about this lawsuit we filed involving the MyGov Trust and Comerica Bank. It's important for people to know that I think that's a large reason why there's this push hostility towards me, because there's been an effort to threaten and intimidate people and try to scare committee members that they somehow will be personally sued if we continue on with this legal action. They'll be personally liable. That is not true. For one, I would never do that, and this has never occurred before. The members would not be personally liable. So what occurred was, after I found out about the $440,000 in the line of credit, I asked the banker from Comerica, may I please see the original loan documents? He didn't want to turn those over. And so this went on for months. And how do you expect me to pay off a line of credit when you won't even show me the original loan documents? What about the transaction history? Can I get that? So I'm supposed to pay down a line of credit without any original loan documents and without any transaction history. No person, no responsible chair would go for this. So there was some dispute going on. So finally, our executive director, Jim Kopis, because he is a very well-trained attorney, knew exactly what to ask Comerica, because he's very well versed like property law, business law, trust law, and he asked them for the original line of credit documents. Well, that's when we find out that the building is collateral. Well, I chose not to use the building. Now, some try to dispute what I said. They're like, oh, well, that building is $1 a month lease. I'm not saying for other people it was. I'm just telling you what we were told. We were told it was $12,000 a month. And I just thought that was an outrageous price for a building that's huge. And then if there's repairs, I'll be stuck dealing with it. I was not elected to be a building manager. I wasn't. And so to me, it made a lot more sense. We have an office downtown Lansing, a quarter of the price. I don't have to worry about toilets and leaky roofs and mice and all the other stuff that comes with the building. So it just made a lot of sense. So looking back at the line of credit, when we found out the building is collateral, and remember, this is debt we inherited. This was not debt that we incurred. And you notice even the letter that came out from NRCC was completely deceptive because they tried to make it sound like it was debt we incurred, and we didn't. And so my question is, as chair, should I ask you, because I am going to make a financial pitch, because we are a grassroots party, and oftentimes we hear like, where are you, how are you raising the money, or where are you at with money? I'm like, have you contributed to the party? And so with that being said, would it be wise as me, a chair, to say, can you contribute every $25 or $100 a month to save a building that we don't use? I think that's, in my opinion, that's not wise. I think a better use of our dollars should be going towards winning elections instead of saving a building we don't use. That is my opinion. I know some people may disagree. So nevertheless, after this information was revealed to us regarding the building, there became a bit of a dispute. You had multiple entities claiming different things. So we petitioned a judge. We're not suing for money. We're not looking for any punitive damages or anything like that. It's simply declaratory relief. We just want a judge to weigh in as to who owns what and who owes what. That's it. We just want a judge to help sort through, because when you have multiple entities making claims of debt and property and responsibility and all these things, the best thing to do, because if the parties can't settle it, you go to a judge. And apparently us just asking a judge to help us sort through this has made a lot of people very angry.
Okay, thank you. This is a question from them. I've been told that you spent money and then came to the budget committee to ask for approval to spend the money. Did you spend money, small or large sums, without the permission of the budget committee? If not, why would they say this? What is the balance currently in the coffers?
So when our first budget committee meeting was not until, I would say, mid-April. So we didn't have a state committee meeting for the first couple of months. So we had to make expenses. We had to pay things and do transactions without a committee approval, because it just wasn't possible. We couldn't wait for 2 months before we conducted business. So after the first budget committee meeting, then we were hoping to get a budget and work with the committee. And as we worked through that process monthly, it began to drag on, and there was a lot of internal squabbling. And then eventually we did pass a budget, and we stayed within the budget. Now, there are people who were upset because we did use a loan to pay for certain speakers at the Mackinac Leadership Conference. But the expenses, the amount we could spend for the conference had been pre-approved. Now, some people were upset. They felt you should have come to us first, and I understand where they're coming from. But here's the thing. When it comes to the Mackinac Leadership Conference, there is, if we are locked into a contract with the Grand Hotel until 2029. And so with us being locked into that contract until 2029, if we would have broken that contract, we would have had to pay a $150,000 fee for breaking the contract. So you're locked into that conference. And as we all know, the Grand Hotel is very expensive. And not only do we have to continue to have that conference, we have to make sure that all the hotel rooms fill out. Because if the hotel rooms don't sell out, then we have to pay something called damages. And not just the hotel rooms, we also have to pay for food. So as it got closer, there was a lot of internal sabotage and drama. We'll be here for another 30 minutes if I went through that. But it became very clear that we weren't selling out rooms. And so I believed that it was a wise investment to invest in better speakers, and it worked. We did make a profit of about $30,000. Is that the profit I wanted? No. But we didn't lose any money. But we had to. Now, some people saying, well, you didn't tell us about this. Well, that's just up for debate. And here's why. We have 13 members on the committee. And the majority of the committee is satisfied with how we conduct business. 2 of the members on the committee are accountants. One is a forensic accountant. Now, there's been members of the budget committee who've made public claims to me that are dishonest. I've had members make claims that you make decisions, we haven't seen anything. I'm like, that's not true. Yes, you have. We had a budget that was approved. Now, do they see every little expense? Well, that's not how the budget process works. The way the budget process works is that you get together as a committee, you create a budget, and then that's my sandbox. I play in my sandbox. I don't necessarily go and ask about every expense because the committee meets monthly. So with the committee meeting monthly, it just wouldn't be practical for me to go before the committee with every expense. That's why they make the budget, and I just operate within my budget. With that being said, our books are open to any member who want to see it. To our budget committee members who want to see it. And then also we've had the issue of leaks. So we've had a lot of sabotage where I'm looking in the papers and we got party documents in the papers. So now we have a policy that we'll be meeting in person on a regular basis. That way committee members can see certain things that I cannot email. I have to protect the organization. Now, why people would make claims, in my opinion, that are dishonest, or sometimes we have members straight out say, I haven't seen a single document. I'm like, that is a lie. That is just not true. Why would they do that? I have my theories, but I don't want to put it out there because I necessarily don't have hard evidence. But what I will say is it's never good to be dishonest. It's never good to over-exaggerate a situation because it creates a lot of problems.
Thank you, Kristina. Next question. As MIGOP chair, I believe your primary responsibility is to raise funds so our people can win elections and take office. What are you doing to get funding back on track to take action within the next weeks?
So one of the things we're working to do is to invest in data. One of the challenges we had was the former administration refused to hand over the email list. And that put us in a very big problem by not having an email list because we can't communicate to raise money. But one of the things is building relationship. Now, let me say this, when raising money is a large part of the job, but what is the money raised for? I disagree with the philosophy that the job of the party is to raise money to give to candidates, because then the party gets involved in picking and choosing who to support. My belief is that we raise money to build tools and infrastructure, because solid tools and infrastructure is what benefits all of our candidates, instead of picking which candidates we want to give dollars to, because I know that's the philosophy. The party is a war chest, and you just dole out cash to who the party wants. I believe that with strong tools and infrastructure and a really quality ground game and a quality commercials, quality billboards, that to me is a better investment in party dollars. Also, when you give money to the candidate, we have no guarantee they'll spend it wisely. We see candidates spend money very stupidly. And so we don't want to take people's contributions, give it to a candidate, and then they spend it in a foolish manner. But if we are investing in tools and infrastructure and support for the candidate, they still reap the benefit. But when it comes to fundraising, there's no magic bullet to fundraising. It's relationships. It's simply relationships. The people you build relationships with. And also with our Good Neighbor program and our election security operations, that's a great way for us to raise those dollars. Why? Because it's passion. People don't want to hear about what you want to do and what we need to do. These are actual things that we've implemented last year. These are action items. So this is stuff we actually have for people to do. And so with these types of action items, people want to give in these situations because now they see us actually doing something instead of please give us money in that way in 6 months I can give it to a candidate. Because we can't even give money to candidates until after the primary anyways. So this kind of puts us in a situation where we have no real activity. Now we have activity going on right now.
Thank you, Kristina. I was here, this is another question. I was hearing bad things and tried to reach out to you. I wanted to alert you. Please tell us how to contact you and hear back.
Well, I would say probably info@migop.org is one of the best ways to help because sometimes a person may have a question and it may be something someone else can answer because I never want, folks to feel like what you have to say or your questions don't matter. Oftentimes it's a bandwidth issue because of me having to oversee a state and then I have R&C duties, sometimes I just don't have the time. And I think that's a really great question because I never want people to feel like I don't care what you have to say or it doesn't matter. Oftentimes it's just a time issue. And so our info@migop.org email, that email is monitored by our Sue Jordan, our member services director, and she always knows which person to get that question to. Because it may be a question you have that somebody else actually can answer for you and quicker than I can. Because sometimes my emails and my texts, they do get clogged. They get very clogged.
Thank you. It appears the courts will decide if you or Pete Hoekstra will be chair of MIGOP. Will you accept the decision? If challenged, I'd challenge you out of your love and respect for MIGOP to move on.
Well, here's the thing. The majority of the committee voted to affirm me as chair. And when you look at it, myself and the state committee members, we're all representatives. And we were all elected at conventions. And I think it's unfair to our committee when the majority of the committee, 59 people want me as chair, 40 don't. That's the majority of the committee affirmed me as chair. And to resign is just, that's not what the delegates wanted. Now, I don't want to get into trashing Pete Hoekstra, but he doesn't particularly have a liberty record. The guy voted for the Patriot Act. And that expanded FISA courts and all kind of other unconstitutional actions. And I can tell you that the majority of the committee who remains in support of me as chair would not be happy if I just simply resigned because I was bullied out of the role. So we did not. And so people elected, our delegates went for a very grassroots focused administration, and that's what they want. Yes. They don't want the status quo. No. Because the fact that the individuals who gathered on January 6th, funny day, but the fact that they went through sneaky and dishonest means, that shows a lot about their character and integrity. Because why not do it above board? Why, drop signatures at 2:00 and do all this other real sneaky stuff and, submitting a special meeting request with a bunch of illegitimate requests, like we want the coalition's vice chair to chair the meeting. Like, no, the bylaws don't allow for that. If people want to make a change, if they were genuine, then they would have done it above board as much as possible. That way, if I was legitimately removed, then the committee would be united and say, hey, the process was followed, this was fair and square, she's not the chair, it is what it is, and I would say, hey, it is what it is. Our secretary wasn't even there. We have no records of any of the claims they're making. And in my opinion, that just shows you how corrupt the uniparty is. Because when the media makes claims that I'm not the chair, like, have you contacted the party? Our secretary is our legal record keeper. She has no records of any of these claims these people are making. So, it's a whole nother conversation of itself. But again, if the committee votes in the majority or the committee votes for the bylaws, then I'm gone, then I'm gone. But as it stands, the overwhelming majority of the committee want me as chair, and I will remain as chair.
Okay, now this is going to kind of repeat the question a little bit, so I'm going to go with it. But How will the current issue of who is the MIGOP chair be resolved? Courts, National Republican Party decision, or other?
Well, I would say this, the committee already resolved it at our January 13th meeting. So that special meeting on January 13th, I called that back in December. And so that's why the committee voted, again, overwhelmingly, that the January 6th gathering was an illegitimate gathering and that any business conducted there was not Michigan Republican Party business. The committee also voted, because even though several issues with several of the signatures they submitted, I still waived the 54 vote requirement and put myself up for a vote. So the committee already settled it. So in Michigan, we have a doctrine called Hyde Manus. That means that the organization, that party, is supposed to solve their own problems. Because when the courts get involved, well, that opens the door for the courts to pick and choose who our chairs are, not the delegates and not the committee. So we have a process. The committee voted to affirm me as chair. So that's our position. I know Melinda and a few others are trying to sue me out of the position. That is not going to work. We believe that we will prevail. This is because Hyde Manus is a doctrine in this state. We do not believe the RNC has any authority to come and pluck me out, because again, who is the chair is up to the delegates, and then after that, the committee, and the committee's spoken. And that's what I believe.
Melinda Pago recently reported in a recording that she was used by thugs to get you out. Who were the thugs and what was her role?
I don't know I mean, I have some suspicions, but I don't want to call names without, any direct evidence. I pray for her. I don't hate her. I don't. It would seem easy for a person in my position to be very angry, because I was betrayed at a very high level. But I don't know who the people are. I mean, I have some suspicions, but again, I don't want to say it in a public setting. Because that may be slanderous, because I may be wrong, but I don't know who those thugs are, but I have some strong suspicions.
Okay, thank you. What amount of money do we currently have to win elections?
So we have about $300,000. I know we do need a lot more. We are in the black as regarding how much we spend per month. Our expenses are very, very low. So now the funds we have, my focus, with the blessing of our budget committee, is to invest it in data. That's my big focus, is building our own data system and purchasing email lists. But that's what we have at the current moment. But we're nowhere near about to go in debt, because our expenses are very, very low per month.
Thank you. Can you explain your involvement with Unauthorized, a Nevada domestic nonprofit corporation that was formed on April 5th, 2023, after you took office, of which you reportedly served as president? This organization supports Democrats as well as Republicans. This strikes me as a huge conflict of interest.
Yeah, so Unauthorized is a 501c4, and 501c4s by definition are nonpartisan, so they support anybody. So Unauthorized focus was election integrity, it is, constitutionalism and election integrity. That's the focus. I never received any money. I never had any plans of receiving any money, trips, compensation of any sort. It was literally a volunteer role. How that came about is in 2021, while running for Secretary of State, I joined a candidate coalition. Folks such as Jim Merchant from Nevada, Rachel Ham from California, Mark Fincher from Arizona, a lot of different people, Sonny Borelli from Arizona, he's a state senator, Doug Mastriano from Pennsylvania. So a lot of us all came together and developed a candidate coalitions to be, and some of these other candidates, it was all election integrity focused, to be the counterpunch to George Soros' Secretary of State project. And so with his Secretary of State project, the goal was to recruit corrupt secretaries of state in battleground states like Jocelyn Benson, Jenna Griswold in Colorado, Katie Hobbs in Arizona, and many other areas, because they believe that if they control the battleground state secretaries of states, then they control the country. And as we can see, what states were targeted to kick Donald Trump off the ballot? Michigan, Colorado, there's other states as well. So they target these states. And so it was lawfare, because they sued the Secretary of State. If you watch Jocelyn Benson, you can totally tell she was in on the fix, because she's on Twitter. Is everybody watching this case? I have to do what the law says. This is very interesting case. So she's already creating a narrative to justify her for just illicitly kicking Donald Trump off the ballot. So with that being said, our groups, that was our focus. And for, since 2021, we've met every week. It is a group of America First Republicans. And through our process, we learned, we would have we had an event in Massachusetts early last year. The year before that, we had an event in Florida. And there were Democrats who would come to our event as well who had evidence of election fraud. And so many of them wind up joining our group. And these people were constitutionalists and they were concerned about election fraud. And there are many people who care about this issue. And the reality is, fighting systemic election corruption is not a partisan issue. Because what happened after 2020, the media tried to defame those of us who are concerned in an election integrity fight and just saying, oh, these are just a bunch of MAGA sycophants. These are a bunch of MAGA freaks who are caring about this issue. So don't listen to it, because you're an election denier. You're a Trumper if you care about election integrity. So they were successful. I mean, that's why we have the concept Trump derangement syndrome. People have been whipped into a frenzy just to hate him for no reason. And so when they have done that, now any issue associated with him, they have now successfully convinced the public that talking about corruption in the election system, that's crazy. You must be a Trumper. So with the systemic election corruption fight, we found that there's lots of people who may not be Republicans who care about this issue, because this is an American issue. This is bigger than the 2020 election.
That's right.
So what occurred, with that being said, a group of us decided to start a group called Unauthorized, and the goal was to fight against systemic election corruption and for constitutionalism. And during that time, I felt that I could not serve as president. I didn't have the time. It may have posed a conflict, but again, I never received any compensation. And so I just felt the best thing to do was for me to resign. But I've never been a Democrat. I've never been a Democrat supporter. And how the whole conversation came about was the executive director, Matt Mack, he was on a show called Flyover Conservatives. So David and Stacey Whitehead they're America First Republicans, but he was on a show called Flyover Conservatives discussing election integrity and the fight for election integrity. And on the program, he said, we don't care who you are. If the Constitution is your North Star, Democrat, Republican, Independent, everything in between, we don't care. If the Constitution is your North Star, we want to help you. And so that's when people extrapolated out of that, who don't like me for other reasons, and went and said she's a Democrat helping Democrats. It's like, no, that's not the case. So that's the whole, what happened with Unauthorized.
Thank you, Kristina. Does the MIGOP have a plan to reach out to Democratic stronghold cities with large groups of union workers?
Yeah, so with that being said, we have on our communications director is also an urban engagement specialist. So we have actually a way that we've broken down people, if you will, into categories, for lack of a better term. So I really don't like identity politics. I think that's one of the worst ways to view people, start viewing them on their race or their gender or all these other things. Like, these are things people can't help about themselves. And the Democrats are really good at trying to pit us against each other based on these categories. So what we believe is viewing people based on behavioral patterns. That's actually a more genuine way of understanding people. And so one of the ways we believe that we'll be successful is by viewing people as such, because as I go across the state, I've learned that it's all about behavior. It's all about behavior and the way people view the world. And if we start to see voters in that light, then we're more effective when going into these Democrat strongholds, because it's still based on archetypes. And so, it's really as simple as building relationship. And that's why the Good Neighbor program is so important, because now we can start going in and building relationship now with people. Because the way the party has done in the past is they want to show up in August and start, having conversations with people, and that doesn't work if you haven't been in their community all year long. And we found during the Secretary of State's race, we spent a lot of time in Detroit and Flint, and we did an event at a church. It was kind of funny. I did an event at a church downtown Detroit. You wouldn't believe how many Democrats showed up, who were either excited that we were there, and some who were livid. They went to the pastor and complained, like, how can you let her be here? But some people said, well, I'm glad you're here. I may not be a Republican, but I want to hear what you have to say. People like to feel like they have options. People like to feel like they got choices. So a lot of people want to hear what we have to say because our positions are common sense. And this is the other thing, that I'm very big on outreach to Democrats. And with the Unauthorized, that was part of our plan, was getting people in the election integrity fight. We just don't change our values. You don't change your values, and it's like we have to apologize for being Republicans. Like, we have to be ashamed to wear a MAGA hat in public. And that's what has effectively happened to us. But we can really turn it around. We don't have to change who we are. We don't have to change our message. The only thing we have to be better at is how we articulate it. That's the difference. Because, you know, when I was campaigning for SOS, we would have volunteers that would walk up to people and just say something brash to them. Like, yes, I am totally terrified about globalism. But I realized that I walk up to a person and say, do you realize there is a global technocratic agenda to come and kill us all? Now, that probably wouldn't be a good leading point with people. That would probably make them walk away. But if I walk up to them and say, hey, what are you concerned about? And then as time progresses, then I can start showing them evidence about what the World Economic Forum is trying to do, how they're trying to erode sovereignty. And then at a certain point, we can get there, but I can't start there.
Thank you. The next question is, how do we get people to listen and hear in this grassroots group? If situations do not go their way, they take offense and verbally attack even the public coming. There is infighting all the time.
You know, it's interesting. I haven't encountered that because there are some people I know who are patriots, but their personalities are just sometimes insufferable. I think that people need to realize why we're here, and everything isn't going to be perfect. Jesus isn't on the ballot. Jesus isn't on the ballot. We can't vote for him. So you're dealing with other flawed people. I've made mistakes. There are things I wish I could have done completely differently. But I think we have to be charitable to one another. I think we have to stop blasting each other on social media as soon as something happens we don't like. I think we also need to work on, talking to each other. Because that's been the problem with some of the people I've dealt with. It's like, you just go blast me on social media or to a group of people before even having a conversation with me. So I think that's something that we need to avoid doing. But I would just try to talk to the person one-on-one, not in a public setting, and just say, hey, what's going on? Now, there have been people, I can think of a county chair in particular, who is just, I've tried to reason with this person over and over. I'm like, we are all patriots. What are you doing? And they just go off on something petty they're upset about. And I think that we just are so used to perfection. We not used to it. We just want it to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy. And I think that oftentimes we need to ask ourselves, if a person is doing something wrong, why is it? Why are they doing what they're doing? Is it out of malice? Is it out of ignorance? Is it out of inexperience? Like, what's behind it? So I think that sometimes we just need some better conflict resolution mechanism. Because it's kind of funny, at the state party, we started a conflict resolution committee, but then I wanted action in the committee because that turned into a conflict itself. So it's like, man, we as Republicans, we get at each other's throats. But again, we have to ask ourselves what's happening. And I also think we need to be careful not to jump to conclusions so quickly about people, that when people do something we don't like, that we assume they're corrupt. And I also think we're a little bit wounded because I think we've been betrayed so much. And I think we're so used to fighting the party so much that sometimes that's all we know. And I think that also kind of feeds some of the conflict.
Thank you. How can we get rid of these drop boxes at our township hall? The Dems put them there. The county clerk people won't do anything about them. Illegal.
Unfortunately, it's in Michigan law. It allows for them. So, this is one of the challenges with our election system. Like, perfect example, the machines. As you guys are following the case right now in Georgia, there was recently where this guy, I forget his name, he's from the University of Michigan, where he manipulated the machine right in front of the judge.
Yes.
And proved that the Dominion machine flipped votes. Right in front of the judge. And so the sad part about it is in Michigan, most of our counties are using Dominion. So now we have to say, okay, Secretary of State, we got a problem here. Now in Antrim County, after they, and this gets to the Dropbox question, after what happened in Antrim County, they moved for a paper ballot hand count. And as you know, there's a way to do a hand count. We did in our party for the 22 cycle, a group of us that were on state committee, like we would actually argue about like real stuff, like we're not like phantom stuff. Like we actually would argue about real stuff. Like we don't want machines in our party elections. That's a real issue. And so a group of us organized, and we were able to do away with machines in our party elections. And we developed a hand count process where we could count 2,000 votes in 90 minutes. So it can be done to hand count ballots. I mean, this is what we did in our country's history for forever. And now with machines, it's such a disadvantage because we don't know how they're programmed. So that's the issue. Now, why am I saying this? So it's beyond reasonable for people to want to do away with machines. So in Antrim County, their Board of Commissioners moved to do away with machines. And the Secretary of State stepped in and said, no, I have the legal authority to do it. I established the uniform voting system. So when it comes to machines and drop boxes, that is a fight that we're figuring out because legally they can have the drop boxes. They can legally have them, unfortunately. The problem is also they're not secured. So there's lots of issues with them. And so there's lots of failure points in our election system. And I wish we could solve them all before November, but we can't. So we have to ask ourselves of all the problems, whether it's electronic poll book problems, whether it's chain of custody problems, what are the problems we can affect in time for 24? Because what I don't want people to do is chase ghosts. Because sometimes when we get fixated on a particular problem, and I'm not to say we don't pursue it in the long term. So I know I'm answering the question, but I'm just trying to share my philosophy on how the party should work. Is that there's a long term and then there's a short term. And so I think one of the challenges for Republicans is that either we get fixated on something that we know we're right about and we lose sight of the immediate goal, or we get so fixated on the immediate goal that we lose sight of the long-term goal. Because the Democrats are trying to fundamentally transform America. Yep. And then we get fixated on, I just got to win this election. Well, then you really turn yourself to, excuse my mind, well, probably the child in the room, so I probably won't use this term, but you just do whatever for the highest bidder. Because your goal is just to win the election. I just got to win the election. So whatever somebody tells me to do, I'm going to do it, even though I'm sacrificing to the long-term goal. That's been a problem in our party. Because we're consistently told to compromise to win an election, but then we get somebody who betrays our values. So we have to do both. So the fix of the machines and the drop boxes, I would love to say we could solve those before the election. I don't see us being able to. But that doesn't mean from a long-term standpoint, we don't fight these issues. That's why we have the 18 points.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we are going to be cutting off the questions at this point now as far as handing in questions. We're not done asking, we're just not accepting any more questions. This one has to do with the question you just asked. It is up to the county clerk what system, hand, machine to use, not SOS, correct?
Well, this is what happened in Antrim County. Now, there is a theory that there could be a lawsuit against the Secretary of State because it says that the Secretary of State established a uniform voting system. But if the Secretary of State finds that the uniform voting system no longer serves the will of the people, they can go through the process again. Now, that's in Michigan election law. There could be a theory that the voting systems no longer serve the will of the people, so therefore she's derelict in her duty. That's an angle I think we could totally utilize. Now, I know there are some clerks who do both. There are clerks who do both. They hand count and use the machine. So that is a way potentially we could, but again, I am not an attorney, but from what occurred in Antrim and my read of the law, if the Secretary of State says you have to use a machine per the uniform voting system, I don't see legally how we not use the machine. But that doesn't mean you can't do a hand count too. So that's something to consider. But I think it's going to take a lawsuit to where it's where hand count is an option, because it's totally possible. We've done it as a party.
In talking to people attempting to remove you, they cite lack of communication and lay it all on you. They seem to have receipts. Have you been deficient in communication with your co-chair and committee chairs?
I would say no. When we first got elected, I asked the co-chair to oversee our Good Neighbor program. I asked the co-chair to oversee our newsletter. I asked the co-chair to help manage relationship with county chairs. I asked the co-chair to work with our district chairs. Maybe that's why I got a problem with a lot of my district chairs. I also asked the co-chair to oversee our March 2nd convention. So I did not box out the co-chair, the former co-chair, as many have claimed. I'm not, and I could completely prove it. I've asked her to do multiple big projects, not little projects, but big projects And you know, when it comes to people, they need to cite specifics because it can be a general, like, you don't communicate with us. Well, if you talk to somebody else, they have a completely different opinion. You know, so I think that it's best if people say she's not doing something, they should provide a specific and not this like moving target. Because it's all, it depends. Because again, you know, when you look at, I got 24 hours in a day and we inherited a startup. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really big on leaving a legacy for the next chair. That's what the Good Neighbor program is all about. Because the next chair can utilize the same system. Because we can't have it there where every chair is in a startup. You started from the ground up, literally. Like, that is not possible. You know, I don't know how many business owners we have in here, but if you're a business owner, tell me how long did it start for your business became profitable and actually was functioning? Oftentimes it takes a couple of years. Imagine doing that for a political party. And we are only in this role for 2 years. That is just terrible. So we want to make sure, like, there was all kind of stuff they didn't turn over to us, like all kind of institutional knowledge, and the list goes on. And I'm not saying that to complain, but I'm just providing factual information. So if you bake all that in, when people say, well, sometimes she don't get back with us, it's like, well, what is it specifically that you wanted and that I didn't do? So if you're not willing to be specific, to me, it's not very credible. That's my opinion.
Thank you. In the spirit of teamwork, number 1, each of the standing committees were assigned and leaders determined. Did you or your staffers interfere with those committee member meetings and their respective leaders? And I'm going to do the second part as well so you can wrap it all in. It was understood that the chairperson draws a salary after he or she has raised $1 million for the party. Are you drawing a salary? Did you raise the $1 million?
So we have raised over $1 million in total since I've been elected as chair, but that was never understood. I'm not saying the person who wrote that didn't mean it genuinely. I believe that you did, but that we were never under that impression. So let me say this about the standing committee chairs. I do not agree with we had our first budget chair we had. It was a big problem where he didn't want staff, he didn't want our chief of staff, he didn't want our general counsel in on budget committee meetings. And I explained to him, I said, listen, our chief of staff interacts with contractors. And if members have questions about contractors or why we picked this vendor, that's the conversation you need to have with the staff. So I don't agree that we interfered. Now, there was some disputes on me removing people from their chairmanship, but here's the thing. I have a responsibility for the committee. And some of the committee chairs were well on their job, and some were just being obstinate and saboteurs, like initial budget chair. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was months, and we had a budget. We were trying to get a budget passed. Like, come on. And he wanted to chase these bunny holes and all this kind of stuff and want to, it was like the committee was upset. And the majority of the committee said, this guy needs to go. And he's just trying to create hostility. So I honored the wishes of the committee. But I don't agree that we were sorry, this coffee spilled. But I do not agree that we were interfering with the committees. I have a duty as chair. The committees are not these independent, autonomous little parties. They're all part of the Republican Party. And so I have a duty to make sure the committee is doing its job. Now, I also thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's like, I think it's a hole in the bottom of the cup. But the committees, I had certain committee members who would complain about certain other members. I had one member tell me that they felt like one of the members, who was a highly problematic individual, just wasted their time. I feel like I wasted a year of my life. So it's always two sides to these stories about committee disputes. I will say that.
All right, thank you. Is it true that you are proposing that all county bylaws have to match the state bylaws? Note, not a fan of centralized authority.
So, thank you for that question. So one of the ideas we had was passing a state party constitution. And this was not to centralize any power, actually it's to give more power to the delegates. And the document needs to be viewed. So some people, as soon as they heard it, and I'm not going to start impugning motive, they believed that, or whether they believed it genuinely or just were whatever, began to make claims that we were trying to centralize party power in the state party. We wanted a standard bylaws because there have been issues across the state where delegates have been abused and mistreated. We saw it in Kalamazoo, where you had a chair get together, them and some other individuals decide they're going to kick a bunch of people off, tell them they're not delegates, and then after the delegates tried to solve their own problems, the chair decided, well, we're going to pass bylaws that if you show up to this event, we're going to fine you like $10,000 to $15,000. You can't do that, and that delegates serve at the pleasure of the chair. And then this person wanted to make claims like, if we're going to fine my guy like $100,000, it was just outrageousness. And so they took their role to be abusive. Now, I do not believe that it is my job to stick my fingers in counties. But I do believe we have a duty to protect the delegates, where we can't have it where you have a chair doing it. Or like where I live in Oakland County, the Oakland County chair, he kicked 2 of our election integrity stalwarts off our executive committee for no reason. No reason, just kicked them off. And just said, you know what you did, you know what you did. Like, that is not okay. And then on top of it all, he sent letters out. Vance Patrick, I'm gonna call him out. He sent letters out to executive committee members demanding their private communication, demanding their emails, demanding their text message, social media posts, anything you said about Oakland County Republican Party. And this dude is a tyrant. He claimed he wanted to be my God chair. Can you imagine what he would have been like? So this is the kind of abuse that some people are experiencing in their counties. So our job is not to control, and again, the state party constitution will have to be approved by every delegate, well, not every, but it'll be voted on at the convention. And people will get input and see. The goal is to build cohesion in our party and to help settle these disputes. Because what we don't want, what we found with the conflict resolution committee, that there was no way to really solve disputes. And then you had issues where, one administration, I don't like the new person, so I'm not going to give you access to the Facebook, or I'm not going to give you access to the website. So we're looking to try to solve these problems as best we can without interference. So my encouragement is before anybody draws any conclusions, to take a look at the document, because it did not put more power in the party, it put more power to the delegates. That's the goal. And so by us having a state party constitution that the state party, district, and county parties bylaws spring from, then it prevents the abuse, it prevents people suing each other. Because if you look at that Kalamazoo dispute, that got really ugly to the point you had the person who was the chair at the time trying to pass by the executive committee, passing bylaws where they're going to hit people with financial fines. This is outrageous. So that's where the idea came from. And also our general counsel read the bylaws for all 50 states. And the way Michigan bylaws, the My God bylaws are written, it just opens the door for so much abuse and confusion. And we're trying to eliminate that.
Thank you. Has the Karamo administration responded to any of the accusations about the 140-page failure of the Karamo administration document?
So, yes, I have responded. Let me say this about Warwick Carpenter, since he's singled me out. I don't mind calling him out by name. I call him the Michael Cohen of Michigan, because his 140-page document was nothing but manipulation and half-truths. When he went to Macomb County and stood there and gave this presentation, and another thing about him is that the 9th district, where he was formerly chair, he stuck them with one of his personal legal bills. And that's a fact. You can ask the chair of the 9th district about that. And that committee is being stuck with his legal bill. So after he did his whole, high energetic presentation, one of the 9th district members, who was also a state committee member, said, wait a minute, we got questions. No, I gotta go. But he can get in front of CNN and all these other people and go on podcasts. But then when the people in the audience said, we got questions, then he doesn't want to answer. So after, what happened is prior to the Mackinac Leadership Conference, we asked him for some help. And we made it clear to him, he wanted a particular individual, Pete Hoekstra, to be on stage at the conference. And we were like, no. And then after that, we explained to him that we did need we needed some more sponsors. And he, our chief of staff, said, we'll take their financial support, but we're not going to compromise on our values. After that, he's flipped like a switch. So the reason I mentioned him, because he's the author of this 140-page document. And so he went around telling people that our volunteers for the conference, that they would go to jail if they continued to volunteer, and claiming that we were, quote, commingling funds. That's not even a thing. Because in politics, right, specifically. Because from the way, when he made this claim, naturally I go to our general counsel, what is he talking about? And that's something completely separate if you have to segregate funds that can't be touched. The way it works in a political party is by type. You know, is it a federal account, is it a state account, Fed-state split, admin account? It's separated that way. So there's if somebody contributes to the party, we can spend it how we want as long as it's compliant with FEC rules. We haven't violated any FEC rules. So he went around telling our volunteers at the conference they would go to jail and the conference was going to fail and all sorts of stuff when that failed. Then he just went on his media tour and just spastically did one thing after another. Then we gave a presentation, Joel and I gave a presentation to Macomb County about detailing why his claims were false. Then he comes out with this 140-page report. And who's going to read that? Now, of course, we had our treasurer went through it naturally because she's our treasurer. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And it was just a bunch of half-truths. And then the interesting part, he cites a lawsuit in his report of where myself and several others had sued the clerk of Detroit and the Board of Election Inspectors in Detroit for election corruption. So these people are an enemy to the election integrity movement. Because if you look at the lawsuit that we filed when I was running for Secretary of State, and Dan Hartman, our general counsel, was the lead attorney on that case, we were suing about the drop boxes not being monitored. We were suing about the adjudication process not being lawful. We were suing about ballots being duplicated outside of the law. We were suing about the Reliant Vote machine that is not lawful for use in Michigan elections, that was privately funded, that prints faux stuff, absentee ballots, is connected to the QVF. That's what we were suing about. So Warren and his ilk are enemies of election integrity. Because if you read that lawsuit, who can say that they're a friend of election integrity and disagree with that lawsuit? And then Project 65, which he so foolishly put in the report, Project 65 is a leftist group that goes after election integrity lawyers. So he cited them going after Dan Hartman for sanctions, or we're trying to go after Dan Hartman's law license as evidence of something negative. No, that's a badge of honor. But he's hoping that people won't read it. He's hoping that he can just say, I got a 140-page document, and most rational people will say, wow, who would invest that much time in a lie? Welcome to politics. When you think about how much money flows and how much power is wielded, you understand why someone would go through all that trouble.
Thank you. It says, what? So I think it says, what accounts and information might exist in this document that are true?
I don't know. I would have to look and see. And I mean, I can think of the top of my head something just, I don't know what is true. But the point is there's, this is a really weird example, but when I was a teacher, I used to tell my students about context. And I would say, what if I told you that, Sam over here went and kicked a 60-year-old lady in the foot or kicked her in the leg? You would say, well, that's horrible. Well, what if I told you that this 60-year-old lady was grabbing his grandmother and assaulting her? And then you find out he kicked her in the leg to get the lady off her grandmother and then went to rescue his grandmother and walked away. You said, well, that's a little bit different. So I don't know what all he has. That it may be an and, if, a but, or they went with this vendor. That may be a truthful statement. But what he does is these people do half-truths. They lie about all the details around the factual statement. That way, when you call out the lie, they'll point to the one factual statement and say, yeah, but that part is true. Well, yeah, but all the details around it were dishonest. So I don't know what he may have said that may be a factual claim, but he lied about the details around it, and our treasurer went through it extensively, the report that he put together.
Thank you. If you haven't already, can you quickly speak to the lawsuits filed by each side? Also, who filed first and people fighting for the opposition claim, we started the lawfare. That's for all, thanks for all you do.
So I'm going to assume, if you mean his current lawsuit, Melinda sued me, I didn't sue her. So regarding the chair dispute, I was sued first, I didn't sue anybody. Regarding the Comerica Bank situation, we filed that legal action, but again, we're not seeking any punitive damages. We just want declaratory relief. The other lawsuit we have going on is regarding Hillsdale County. And so if people, it took one of the questions earlier about not wanting centralized control, well, that's really at the heart of the Hillsdale lawsuit. So what occurred was there were two competing factions in Hillsdale County. At the 5th District Convention on February 17th, the 5th District decided which group they were going to recognize. That report was submitted to the Weiser administration, and the committee voted to affirm the district's report. When I say the committee, excuse me, all the delegates, that was one of the things we accepted all the district reports. And in that district report was which Hillsdale County party or which group would be recognized. So there was still some litigation going on between the groups, and I guess there was a judgment on which group would be recognized, and I didn't get detailed information from the court. The court never said to me, we need you, I never received a court order to update the MyGov website. But then, because the MyGov website wasn't updated, they tried to fine me in contempt of court. So we spent like half a day in Hillsdale arguing Heidemanns that it is not the duty of the court to solve this matter, number one. But number two is that I was not in contempt of court. I never received any notification from the court regarding who should be on the website, and this was still a case of dispute. And so then the judge found me in contempt of court for not updating the website. And so again, it was just real messy situation. I felt the judge being very petty. But those are the 3 legal actions, but only one we pursued was regarding Comerica. All others were thrown at us.
All right, thank you. It seems to me that no matter which way this chair situation is decided, whether in a court of law or by the RNC, the Republican Party will be divided, which is a losing situation all around. There will be a side that is disenfranchised, which is not ideal. Is there any way that you can see to fix this division and merge the factions?
You know, that's kind of been the eternal problem in the Republican Party, and I don't mean to say that in a flippant way, but I think what helps us to focus on the mission and not the person. The challenge we have is, I've had this happen to me in my time as chair, where there's people and you go and you stick an olive branch out, and then the person comes and they swipe you again, just like the former co-chair. I stuck an olive branch out and said, listen, let bygones be bygones. Let's work together. She's like, yeah, we'll work together. Like, it was so crazy. Like, we have an office in Lansing where she had an office, she only visited once. But you have your own decorated office. I'm like, you should come to your office. Let's come to the, no, I'm busy, I got this to do. So and then you see what happens. So that's kind of some of the challenge, is that you try to stick an olive branch out, but because whatever agenda the person has, then it's like they have something shady going on. Or you don't stick the olive branch out, and then the person may actually be somebody you can work with. So I think the best solution for us is to focus on the mission and not each other. I think that is what's best, because some of these disputes, some of these rifts between us, some of them I don't think will ever be healed. So instead, just focus on the mission. What can I do to fulfill the mission? And really back to the Good Neighbor program, the thinking about that was because we as Republicans are individualists, and Democrats, they have an easier time coalescing, and we don't, because oftentimes we want to be in charge. So the beauty of the Good Neighbor program is it lets you be in charge. It doesn't top-down dictate. It's like, this is the information you need to know in your community to be best prepared to defend your community. And then you inform yourself, and then you as an individual defend your community, and the people you want to work with, you guys get together and defend your community as a group. But it doesn't force you into a system where you kind of have to submit yourself to something. It's all about personal empowerment.
All right, thank you. It says, knowing Peter Hoekstra and believing he's also a good person, and now we are subjected to a split camp, I am troubled by the lack of leadership's ability to rally the base. We have lost too many months of momentum building with this drama. Why are you better than P. Hoekstra this late in the game?
So, the thing about it is, you say, why am I better than Pete Hoekstra? I don't know what his plan is. The way I look at it is that I have a very specific philosophy. And I personally believe, I'm not saying he's an evil person, I'm not saying that, but I strongly believe his philosophy is similar to Ron Weiser's. And I served on state committee last cycle, and I served on it before that under Laura Cox. And what I've witnessed firsthand is that philosophy doesn't work. Now our program, our Good Neighbor program and our election security operation, those are already programs up and running. So right now for the Good Neighbor program, it's not where I want to be, but we have about 600 people in the program, more since we've been promoting it more heavily. But our programs are already up and running. So there's a philosophy difference. And why would we go with the philosophy that has failed us? I think oftentimes the philosophy of the past we feel comfortable with because it comes with millions of dollars. So we're like, okay, this person got millions of dollars at their disposal. We're gonna go with that because it feels safe. But then we lose. Or we get stuck with Republicans who are no good. Now, you know, we've been through this too many times before. I mean, after the 2020 election, many of us, myself included, we begged and pleaded with our Republican elected officials. We control both chambers. And it's Article 2, Section 4H of the Michigan Constitution, I have a right to an audit. Why won't you give me an audit? And we control both chambers. It's because they're beholden to whoever gives money to their campaigns. And so oftentimes we feel comfortable because, yeah, they got millions of dollars. No, I don't have millions of dollars. I was not elected because I have millions of dollars. I was elected because I won't lie to you. So that's a really low bar to put somebody in a statewide position. But the reality is that for so long, that's what we've had. We've had people who lie to us and trick us, but we accept it because they have a lot of money. And that's not what the delegates wanted. What the delegates wanted was a grassroots style party. So it's not so much that he's an evil, terrible person, it's that the philosophy is very different. And I've sat on state committee under his philosophy, and it doesn't work. So I believe this philosophy empowers us as an individual, and it helps us get better candidates. Because we gotta get real Republicans elected. Amen. We've been through this so many times before. I mean, it made no sense. If you had Democrats witness Republicans cheating in an election where that guy got booted from office, would Democrat activists have to beg their party to investigate? No way. They would be burning cities. They wouldn't put up with it. But yet we're told to sit down, shut up, move on, don't talk about this, move decorum. Oh, you know why don't talk about it? Because the donors aren't going to like it. Well, guess what? I don't want their money then. Because all we're doing is destroying our country. So that is why at this time I am going to make a pitch to everybody to contribute. Because we do need lots of money. We do. But my belief is that oftentimes the philosophy has been the money goes to a lot of useless consultants. Because when the party last cycle said they spent $18 million, my question is on what? I didn't see a flyer, I didn't see a commercial, I didn't see a billboard. And we looked at those books and I didn't see any meaningful expense besides to consultants. Now consultants aren't bad in and of themselves. We hire people. So I'm not saying that consultants are terrible. No, that's not my point. But what are they doing? What are they accomplishing? What did we get last 3 cycles? We got nothing. So a philosophy shift in the beginning, we are solvent, we're not going broke, but we do definitely need some more funds. But also with the Good Neighbor program, as we do more outreach, people see a reason to give to the party because they see us doing something. So if you can contribute $20 a month, there's people who get $5 a month. Whatever you can contribute, it all adds up. I'm a big believer in the multiplier effect. Because if we have 1 million people giving $5 a month, I mean, there's at least 3 million Republicans in the state. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily we get 1 million people giving $5 a month, but you get the point. Because in the Republican Party, we have like the donors on one side and the activists on the other side, and then nobody likes each other. That is part of our split. That is at the heart of the split. Because oftentimes, keep in mind, there are some very wealthy people who don't donate to the party because they don't like the direction it was going in. But oftentimes the traditional donors to the party, they're not very conservative. It just benefits them to have certain Republicans in office for whatever goal they have. Then you have the grassroots, we're very conservative. So naturally that creates a massive split, where with the Democrat Party, their donors and activists, it's no separation. Everybody donates and everybody's active. It's just, this guy can afford $1,000 a month, so he doesn't have time to be as active. And this guy can only afford $10 a month. So he has more time to give. So it all works together. So my philosophy, as we get more conservative, there are people who will start giving again. I mean, think about it. How many people have we encountered that it's a point of pride that they don't give money to the Republican Party? I wouldn't give those people any money. They're horrible. They're terrible. I just give to the candidates. We hear that all the time. That should never be a point of pride to not contribute to the party. So my belief is that we have to give something people want to give to. And with action programs, they will. And so I believe that's what makes me, the reason why the committee continues to support me. Because with a really robust ground game, that's how we win. And then also with the robust ground game, it by default makes the county stronger. So then that way everybody isn't so dependent on the state. That's my philosophy.
Thank you again. Could you please explain why there is very little info on the internet about you prior to your SOS run? The image consulting circles, in image consulting circles, it's referred to as scrubbing.
Well, I would say the reason why there's very little information because I was not a public figure. So it's nothing nefarious because my background is education. So I was a college instructor at Wayne County Community College, and also I have a master's in Christian apologetics, so I was not a public figure. But I was very active in the Republican Party. I was active in college, I took some time off, I got back active again at the end of 2016. So I was just active in the party. I had a podcast called Right on 14th with the 14th District Republicans, and then I was a spokesperson for the Oakland County Republican Party. But after 2020, and I was just an everyday activist. I was not looking for political office because my concern is the soul of man. I mean, we're all gonna die and have to face God. What's gonna happen? So that to me still is my primary concern. But after 2020, when I went to the TCF Center and I saw what I saw, I'm like, these people have just committed massive election fraud in our face. And they didn't even care. And then the kicker part wasn't that they didn't even care, that the media went and lied about it. It tried to convince everybody we were crazy. And I remember reading the Channel 4, that's the NBC affiliate in the Metro Detroit area, an article where they're saying, oh, there were no Republican poll challengers kicked out. I'm like, I watched it happen. I mean, talk about being gaslit. And the part that was so crazy to me, how do you have multiple news entities parroting the same story? And then after that, our Republican elected officials just were like, yeah, but the donors, the donors aren't gonna like this. I'm like, this is crap. And so that's what frustrated me, and I ran as Secretary of State. So it's not that I didn't have an existence, it's just that I wasn't a public figure. I was just an everyday citizen. There was really nothing to report about. And so I ran for Secretary of State, and then I got involved with the coalition of candidates, and then it just kept going and going, and it just kind of snowballed on. But, I mean, I think the question is very valid, but I just wasn't a public figure, so there was just really nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. The next few questions looks like it's going to be mostly about Melinda, so we'll start with this. Melinda has said that you cut off communications with her very shortly after winning office. Is this true, and if so, why did you do so?
I did not do that. Her and I went to CPAC together. There's pictures of us there. So no, I did not cut off communications with her. We went with Paul Cordes together. We did a lot of stuff together. We did have a breakdown, and some of that I don't want to get into, but I did not cut her off. That's not true. As I said, we went to CPAC together. We were there for like 3 days. After that, I asked her specifically to fulfill certain tasks, and we had our state committee meeting. I did not cut her off. So why she makes these things up, and that does call down a breakdown in our relationship because she frequently makes false statements, habitually. It's terrible. You know, and it's like, why are you telling people I boxed you out? You know I can show all kind of emails and text messages to prove otherwise. Why make stuff up? And that, to me, is a pet peeve. My mother always told me, never trust liars, cheaters, and thieves. Because you just never know. So why she claimed I cut off communication? I guess that's why she's suing me. She was part of the other side. So, but no, I never cut off communication. Like I said, we went to CPAC right away.
Okay. This is the next question. To my understanding, she had not been transparent about her poor credit and could not get credentialed. Therefore, she could not be added to the bank account, and that impacted her role.
I have no knowledge of her having bad credit. That's not something I would speak. I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. Did you thoroughly vet Melinda Pago prior to bringing her on as co-chair candidate? Some things that are still in question are: 1, her claims to having a degree. 2, she has always said she has 3 children, but recently a 4th in prison was revealed. 3, her claims to financial management skills were oversold, and not only did she have a bankruptcy, but she has huge financial challenges and has left her county GOP in debt. Don't know where the question is. Oh, did you thoroughly vet Melinda Pago?
You know, I don't want to speak to any personal challenges she's having. I can't. I don't want to speak to that. I thought I did. Obviously, I didn't. My reason for picking her was she had a reputation of being a really hard-working patriot, and she had a really great reputation for that. She was our county captain during the SOS race. I knew a lot of patriot counties who had taken over, and the old guard is very spiteful, and she helped a lot of them in their transition. She just had a really great reputation. A lot of people I trusted just adored her, and I just thought she was great. And when we campaigned together, we had a great time. I thought her personality was great. I brought her on specifically based on the things I knew about her to kind of offset my deficiencies. I would say I obviously didn't vet her enough, that's for sure. But I look at things a lot differently, being in this role as chair. Sometimes, and I'm not calling her this, right? Because I just try not to be overly nasty. I try to make sure I'm always a professional. But what I will say, in general, and it's not specific to her, that in politics, oftentimes, people will latch on to you if they feel like it personally benefit them. And they will show you a side of themselves that seems great. And I do realize that I learned that a lot even with some of the original staff we hired. Because some of the original staff we hired, I was like, okay, are you a patriot? Are you going to stab me in the back? That's a really low bar. Do you have any political experience? And then as you got to working with people, like we had one employee whose attitude was just atrocious. I'm like, I cannot continue to expose people to this. This is awful. So I've learned the importance of vetting people on a lot of those things that's mentioned in that question that can be other indicators into their personality. So I will say I've learned a lot on the importance of vetting people more thoroughly.
Thank you. Did Melinda Pago seek to have her personal expenses paid? How could she personally fund her volunteer lifestyle and duties and pay for things when she and her family have basically no income? Did GOP fund her trips, etc.? New car, question mark?
So no new car. Like I said, we did go to CPAC. Of course, that was something that the party paid for because that was us on a part of party business. As far as expense, she did have a co-chair expense account. She never activated the card. So why she didn't activate the card, I don't know. But that option was available to her.
Okay. Since Melinda Pago and others were removed for 5 years from MIGOP, will you oversee at a state level enforcement of this?
Well, that's the duty of the next committee. One of the things we're really big on making sure that we keep good records. Our secretary keeps meticulous details. The committee who comes after us, they do have a decision if they want to let these individuals who violated conflicts of interest, and these are serious offenses because these individuals actively sabotage and undermine the organization, and the committee agreed with that. If the next committee decides, from what I understand, that's the next chair's decision, but the next committee will be sure to have all the details as to why this occurred and why these individuals were given these violations.
Do you have any support from elected officials on a national level? It seems that media is really pushing the Hoekstra-Pago narrative. Do you have any media support to combat?
This goes to the fake news thing. I'm the everyday citizen. I don't have those kind of deep pockets that the other side have, and they have media people on their payroll. We try our best to get our message out there. I do have one person who works so hard to help me fight back is Laura Logan, she's one of the best journalists. This woman is, if you ever meet her, she is like one of the most fascinating human beings you will ever meet. And she is a person who will throw herself literally in danger to get the truth of what occurred. But she has really come to my defense. And Joe Hoft from the Gateway Pundit. But other than that, we don't have an NBC and a Fox News. We just don't have that. But our goal is to get our message out as much as possible. So we try very hard to get our message out there. But when you realize, even with some of the national elected officials, when you look at the centralized command and control structure of funding, these people it's a finger on them. You have to follow the narrative. I'll give you a perfect example. When we first got elected, one of the first things I did was I hired a fundraiser, and I wanted to hire a political advisor. Because one of the things I'm intimately aware of is my deficiencies. So I said, I want to hire a political advisor because I'm running a state party and there's lots of nuances that I need to be aware of. And, I interviewed a person who I thought was going to be absolutely amazing. Now, this person was connected to a major donor family. And essentially our administration had been blackballed. With our fundraiser, this guy had a phenomenal Rolodex nationally. And we would talk to people. And I would talk to people and say, this is what we're doing, zero interest. So I tried. And this person who was a political advisor, like a political consultant, they talked and we had a great conversation. They just ghosted me. Then there's another prominent Republican, I'm not going to get to their name, who's a known patriot, right? Because I went to people who were known to be connected to patriots, who work for patriots who are elected official. I went and sat with this person's team. I had an extensive meeting, went to dinner. I thought it'd be great. They could kind of help us, because what I was looking for was someone to kind of help me set up the organization as a political organization who had a little more experience than I did. I had a real nice meeting with them. They ghosted me. That happened with several potential contractors. And then I later found out, how sometimes people criticize the consultant class, like it's the consultant class is ruining everything? No. The consultants are middlemen. They're just a middleman. And if the person who bankrolls that consultant says, you blackball this person, you blackball this person. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure you don't get other jobs. And so we have been blackballed from the very, very beginning of our administration. So it was some really, and I hope I'm answering the question, but it was some really interesting things that we had to deal with, that it was just kind of like, okay, so we're going at this. So even with all the obstacles, we just forged our way.
Thank you. How do we remove and replace the past D2 officers?
That is something that the committee, your executive committee is going to have to decide and discuss per your bylaws, what grievances you have. That's my best answer. You're going to have to look and see what grievances you have, and then per your bylaws, how the committee rectify that if you have a series of grievances.
Bad company corrupts good character, 1 Corinthians 15:33. There are three names that keep coming up in what is said and written about the current situation: Mike Labadie, Robert Owens, and Jim Kopis. There seem to be questions about the character of all these men. Here are my questions. Have any of these men been in your inner circle? Are you currently consulting with any of these men? How strongly have you been influenced by these men?
So one, Jim Kopis is our executive director. He is not a felon. That was false reports where people are accusing him of being a felon. No, he is not. Jim Kopis is a fantastic executive director. He's a brilliant attorney. This is the way I function as chair. So I have basically a council of people. There's maybe about, I would say, 7 or 8 people that I counsel with on a regular basis. And oftentimes, as I go throughout the day, not every day, but sometimes if I run into a situation, I will counsel with them and get everybody's advice so I can make the best decision. And I think that that's a very wise thing to do. So Jim Kopis has been a phenomenal addition to our team. Robert Owens, he volunteered for the Mackinac Leadership Conference, helped us bring in people like Tamara Scott, the Iowa National Committee woman. He helped us bring in Alan Keyes, Dr. Charles Thurston. So he did a really great job helping us bring in speakers. When it comes to Mike Labadie, he is a friend of mine. Now, the reality is there are people who dislike him personally. And let me say this about politics. Some of the people who dislike him personally felt that I was listening to him too much and not them. So it's like, okay, so you don't have a problem with me listening to people. You just want you to be the person that I listen to. And so he's not this nefarious character. No, he's not a CIA agent. No, I'm not a puppet. The reality is Mike Labadie is a patriot. And a whole lot of patriots across the state he has helped tremendously. A whole lot of patriots. And so naturally, they're going to just demonize him because a whole lot of patriots, he's been helpful. But I'm nobody's puppet. Nobody controls me. But the reality is that I have people that I lean on and I get advice from. I am 38 years old. So I do have people who are older than me who I turn to and ask for questions, because many of these people have held their own businesses. they've worked in government jobs. So I think that's actually wise instead of thinking you know everything. But I do not surround myself with criminals and liars, and nor am I controlled by anyone. I make my own decisions based on prayer and the best advice. But it's very common for members of our team. I may call 4 or 5 people and say, hey, I'm having a challenge. What do you think? What do you think? And I'll ask 4 or 5 people, and that way I feel like I'm best equipped. Because the last thing you want is a chair who only listens to themselves. That is when things become a problem, in my opinion.
Thank you. Where are you getting the voter data from? And how do you think, or is Election Integrity Committee working on getting rid of Eric?
Our committee is not currently working on getting rid of Eric. It's not that that is not important. It's just a bandwidth issue. When it comes to voter data, so we work with Check My Vote. We've partnered with them, and they regularly get the new QVF. And so what Check My Vote is that it's a program. It's not just where you can check to see who the registered voters are, but it also it has a system where to work to clean up the voter roll. So they get it directly from the Secretary of State or from National Change of Address. Now we have 2 different canvassing systems that the Republican Party uses. One is Check My Vote, specifically for focus on election integrity. We also utilize Numenar, and Numenar is more for like knocking doors and talking to people, knowing who your neighbors are. Also, there's a texting application, but that's where we get information from, both of those sources.
Are you going to share, this is my own question, but are you going to share it with the candidates?
Numenar is something for everybody to use. As far as Check My Vote, that's something anybody can use too. So all of our information that we utilize is available to anybody who want to use it. So the Check My Vote, that's available to anybody who want to use it. It's a website, checkmyvote.org, and you can just go there and check your own neighborhood. Now, as far as Numenar, yes, they'll have to access it through the party, but that's something that any candidate or county utilizes. And we have had a few trainings, but we'll have some more.
Is there a charge for that?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That
the
was my own
RNC absorbs that cost.
Okay. Are you able to fundraise for data in cooperation with your counties? They need the same data?
I think that's a good question. Will we share information with the counties? Absolutely. When it comes to Numenar, so with Numenar, it's our canvassing program, and they do utilize consumer data. So that is information that you can utilize once your county party just signs up and get a login. There are some custom information that we want to build, but we don't absolutely share with the county parties, because our philosophy is that if the counties have the information, you're more empowered. So absolutely we share the information, but we're in the process of building a more robust system, if you will, where we want to purchase additional data points to develop our voter profiles a little bit better. But that's something we're in the process of building. So we'll have basically 3 streams of data: Numenar, Check My Vote, and what we're customly building.
All right, thank you. Do you agree politics run downstream from culture? If so, what is the GOP doing to support conservative media sources, specifically social media content creators?
I absolutely agree with this this phrase that, everything is a downstream of culture. That's why, just as a Christian, I have a biblical worldview. That everything I believe, think, act is filtered through that lens. As far as what we're doing to support conservative content creators, that's not something I've thought about per se. We want to create our own content, but that's also with the Good Neighbor program why we're really big on making sure people get involved in social events. Because oftentimes we as Republicans, we can come across as kind of stodgy to other people because we love our banquets and dinners. I mean, they're cool to us, but other people really don't care. So we want to get Republicans more involved in the culture. And that's something that's very important to me, but the Good Neighbor program is a way for us to do that. That way we're at events. Because if you just say, hey, I'm here with the Good Neighbor program, you haven't even gotten to whether you're a Republican or not. And I think it's critical. I have a couple of examples. I remember once I was at the Red Bull Art Theater in Detroit, and there was this contest going on where you had these people were doing like a graffiti competition. And when you see things like that, the other side is so effective of using art and entertainment to communicate their message. So we would love to be more supportive. How supportive we could be of that's as our volunteer force grows, but I would love to explore more ways we could be, beneficial to Republican content creators.
Thank you. With all of the abortion bills recently passed, what will be the strategy moving forward, and how will we vet our candidates to reverse these?
I think that it comes with us, the constituents in that community, asking those people those questions and look at what their record are. Looking out for canned answers, because there is a massive push, because I've had this situation where I reached out to people to contribute to the party, and I'll get you gotta change your position on abortion. We're losing elections. The pro-life community cost us 22. That's crap. It's the culture of death. That's not our fault for speaking truth about it. Vetting candidates is not always easy. It's no magic. It's just the more they're willing to expose themselves. That's one of the reasons why I've exposed myself. I have no idea what the question said. We have not coordinated. As you guys can clearly see, I have no idea what's on the other side. Most candidates will not do that. They're very scripted. I remember once when I was working at a high school in Detroit, and Gretchen Whitmer came to speak, and I was so excited because I was a dual enrollment instructor. I'm like, oh great, I can't wait, I'm gonna stump her. So we get the questions, we write our questions on a note card, and we give it to the person where we know they already have it pre-selected what they're gonna ask her. It's just all a trick, because we're thinking we're all submitting questions, but they're pre-selecting it. And I look at candidates, how accessible is the candidate? So if people notice me with events, unless I genuinely have something to do, I stick around and talk to as many people as I can until I'm just too tired. But candidates I don't trust are the ones that come late and leave early. Because that means they don't want to talk to anybody. They sweep in real fast, except for like Donald Trump, of course, for security reasons. But everybody else, they sweep in real fast, and then as soon as they're finished, they're out the door. They got their handler to get them out, so you can't ask them anything. Those are the people I would not trust. Because they're terrible. They're terrified of a gotcha moment. So to me, one of the best ways to vet a candidate is how long they're willing to sit there and entertain an open situation without a handler blocking it. That's, to me, the best way to vet a candidate.
Thank you. Do you have someone in mind for co-chair?
Still thinking about it. Still thinking about it. It's a big, I've learned my lesson. That's a big thing. It's not arbitrary.
I'm going to ask both these questions, and these are going to be the last questions of the evening. So I'll ask them both, and hopefully you can answer them in one conversation. Do you really believe you are equipped to rebuild a corrupt system built on corrupt systems that are already so broken? If yes, why? What are your biggest regrets that you wish you would have done differently since taking office?
Okay, so, I think the obvious like, oh, I picked a different co-chair, but that's kind of, I don't need to repeat that one. I think I should have done a better job with some of the staff I hired early on. I think that's some of the key positions I wish I would have hired different people. I would say also, I think I should have invested more in our communications and data a little bit earlier. I think that should have been the first investment, because my first thing was I need to get staff to help me with the load. I think I should have invested in data a lot sooner. If I can think of something else, but there is something else. I think I should have had better oversight systems, because with the Mackinac Leadership Conference, I don't think that things would have spiraled out of control and it turned into like all hands on deck if I would have had better management systems in place to supervise. And that's what I would say, just some of the things I wish I would have done it a little bit differently. I wish I would have maybe put a person in charge of our Good Neighbor program a lot sooner. Because initially I gave it to the co-chair to oversee, but I wish I would have probably had a person on that a lot sooner, because I think it could have been even more effective faster. Also, I think that one of the mistakes I made too was sometimes I have a nature of people that I find to be difficult, I can kind of avoid. I think I should have maybe tried to talk to certain people a little bit sooner, because there are some good people who I think have getting caught up in the drama of Telegram and what have you, that maybe if I would have sat and talked to them a little bit sooner, they wouldn't have got so consumed with the drama. Now, when it talks about a corrupt system, yes, I feel I'm equipped because God is with me. And I don't say that as a flippant answer or just a way to obfuscate, but we are fighting a corrupt corrupt. And like I said, if these people were to illegally throw me out, you'll be waiting on that tell-all book. It'll be good. It'll be real good. But the thing about it is our system is just corrupt to the core. It is, I mean, there isn't a part of our election system, of our political system, in my opinion, that isn't corrupt. It's just corrupt through and through, from the party, just everything. It's so corrupt. And it's because, in my opinion, we've walked away from the Lord. Amen. Because sometimes, you know, I sit here as chair, and I'm like, we're only as good as our people. That's all we are. Because as a free country, if we don't have moral people, we can only go so far. It's not going to work if we don't have moral people. So I believe the primary way to fix our country is by spreading the gospel. Now, I respect the fact that everybody may not be a Christian. But since, you know, this is just me answering the question honestly as a Christian, I believe that that's the only way we're really going to save this country. Because politically, we can really only do so much. So what I will say is not just myself, but the team, because I believe that I'm only as good as my team. That's it. If I don't have quality people around me, there really ain't much I can do. But our team, we're all fighting for our kids and for God. That's what motivates us. Not money, not prestige. I can tell you some days I'm like, why am I putting up with this? But when I look at my family, when I look at what's going to happen to us, what choice do we have? So that alone is what makes me know that I'm capable and just ready to keep fighting, because we're just not putting up with it. Because if we lose our country, where are we gonna go? Mm-hmm. America is the last stand. This is the greatest country in human civilization, and I love my country, and I say that just at the bottom of my heart, because you know when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, every time that moves me, because I'm just thinking of all the people who poured their blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice for us to live free. And we're gathered to protect that and defend that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can feel a little daunting when we look at the people we're fighting. I mean, they have billions of dollars at their disposal. They have the media. They control the pillars of society. But then I think about, but God, you know, isn't that the story all throughout Scripture where they look at David, Daniel, Moses, Jeremiah? I mean, one of my favorite stories in the Bible is Elijah, when the prophets of Baal, and they're doing to show that their God can, you know, set fire, and he's, you know, Elijah's just making fun of them the whole time. I mean, his attitude was perfect. And then he went and doused water on what he was, and commanded, not commanded, but then God set what he had on fire. And that right there, to me, is just really a picture of how we need to be. Yes. Because it can be so daunting and so overwhelming and so scary. You know, some days we get up like, man, our enemy have a lot of money, and they have the media, but we have God. Amen. So what is better?
Amen.
Thank you. Before we before we wrap it all up, we do have some last minute reminders. So please don't leave quite yet. But first, we appreciate your taking the time to come and speak to us at this gathering this evening. Kristina, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And yeah, let's give her a big round of applause. We already did that, but yeah, that was good. So we want you to remember to sign up for the Good Neighbor program and the election integrity stuff. That's a must. And in case you're not aware, next slide, go ahead. In case you're not aware, the presidential primary date has been moved from August to February 27th. Due to this change, the impact on how our delegates will be awarded to candidates has also changed. We are no longer a winner-take-all delegates state. Since Michigan has an open primary, many Democrats could be voting on the Republican ticket for president. It is imperative that we get the word out to all Republicans of their right to vote in this election through newspaper ads, social media, and word of mouth. We cannot let the Democrats decide who will be our presidential candidate. Yes, absolutely.
And if I could ask, so it also, to her point in Michigan, because that we have a split primary, so March 2nd is our convention in Detroit, and it's kind of funny, we got a great sense of humor, our administration, so it's gonna be at the TCF Center. So 16 of our at-large, to her point, the at-large delegate votes will be awarded based on the February 27th primary. The other 39 votes, 3 per congressional district, will be awarded based on the March 2nd convention at the, they changing out of Huntington Place, but it's TCF Center. But they'll be awarded based on that. And so you'll be voting for who do you want to send to the RNC convention in July in Milwaukee. Also, who, so 3 delegates and 3 alternates, who do you want the Republican nominee for president to be? And then also, who do you want to elect RNC committee man, RNC committee woman? So those are also very important. We have 168 members on the RNC. So it's really important to elect good people.
Now, this next screen, if you want to pull your phone out, there is a really good article by the Detroit Free Press it explains how this election and the allocation of delegates will be administered. So if you can snap a shot on that, you can probably click it on your phone. They do a great job on how to explain it. I know you did, but it's easier to read for me anyway. And we want to make sure that you, as a delegate heading into your county convention, need to be aware of the changes. Everybody's okay. I see a few more doing. Everybody pretty good there? Got one last one in the back, I think.
Good.
All right, we're gonna move on, yeah?
Is that link on that last page active
Yeah,
right now?
yeah, I looked at it today.
Okay.
We'd like to thank the backbone of the Republican Party, the precinct delegates, for attending tonight's gathering. You are the guiding force of the party. This is an election year for you. If you intend to run again, please be sure to fill out an affidavit of identity and return it to your county clerk no later than May 7th at 4 p.m. We need you. I'm going to be Uncle Sam and point. And then the last bit is our meeting for Grassroots. If any of you are interested in attending our Grassroots meeting, our next meeting is scheduled for February 12th. We have Senate candidate Alexandria Taylor has agreed to join us, and we'll also be conducting a presidential straw poll of our attendees so the Grassroots can determine who we need to endorse for the presidential candidate. And we hope you will join us. So that wraps up this gathering for the evening. We would like to thank everyone in attendance for coming. Have safe travels on your journey home, and God bless all of you.
All right, well, that sure was a long one. A lot of questions were asked and answers were given. Feel free to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.